Hello there. So we're a little bit early because we're just checking everything, make certain we've got audio and video, and we're going to cross post and post cross and do all that. Hello, my name is True Thomas the Storyteller, and I love telling traditional stories. Hello there. So we're a little bit early. And we need to cut the audio there. I hope you're all doing fine. I'm going to be just filling a little air here, you know. Saura saura banya no na hugar marhen hun saraling shellacuddio and his coigre victor shellacuddio and shakatera ruv and shellacuddio and his coigre victor shellacuddio and shakatera ruv and bio and a skipper bio. How's that? Are we doing okay? Excellent. Can you hear this? All right, folks, if you can actually hear this and this sounds and looks good, please send a message to Kat, who's standing by. And then also we have RJ in the room, who's going to be my emergency audience, because we are all practicing social distancing. Whee! Which kind of explains why I'm in my house on a St. Patrick's Day when I should be out there telling stories by a fire someplace. But it was not meant to be. So I get to gather you all here with me to share a few stories and songs, and I hope that works for you. So how soon give me a time here?
1 minute.
We have 1 minute. Excellent. So like I said, if you are seeing this either on my profile page or on True Thomas, please just throw a little heart, a little note or something just to let us know that you're seeing this and that you're hearing this and this is all working for you. Excellent. All right. So, first of all, my name is True Thomas the Storyteller. How did I come by the name True Thomas? Well, I once belonged to a wonderful organization called the Queen Maeve Encampment. And it was a Celtic reenactment encampment that had people from all sorts of different time periods. And when I joined, they said, so after you've been in a year or two, you can decide who you want to be. I already knew who I wanted to be. I wanted to, because you picked people to bring to life, Finn McCool, Cuchulainn the Hound of Ulster, I wanted to be True Thomas the Rhymer, because he's kind of like a real world Scottish Doctor Who. He's still traveling through time. We have land signed by him. He's a fascinating character. He's called True Thomas because he has the tongue that cannot lie. I fortunately am not afflicted with such a wonderful blessing. So I'm going to tell a few fables and a few stories, and I hope you enjoy them. So is everybody hearing this okay? Excellent. So let's talk a little bit about storytelling. First, I'm going to lubricate because lubrication is important. So a traditional, excuse me, I'm now very messy. A traditional bard in Ireland could entertain for 3 months, never repeating himself once. It took 20 years to train them. They knew over 200 forms of meter and rhyme. They were a member of the Druidic order, along with the Brehons and the Druids. And it was quite an honor to have a bard. The High Bard of Ireland was called the Ard Olaf, the chief creator. And oftentimes they weren't the ones who actually played the harp. That was actually the job of a professional harper who would often travel with that professional poet throughout his lifetime. Well, as the years went by and generations passed, the tradition of having stories and songs eventually went from being a bard to being a Shawnee, a Scailtaban, somebody who told stories by fires. And if you were in Ireland or Scotland and places like that, let's say before radio and television and all these other glowing things, it was quite an honor to have a storyteller come and sit by your fire. They brought all the adults in and the kids were pushed to the back. Storytelling wasn't just for little kids. And you could tell that it was going well because in the houses, the kids would climb up into the rafters, and when the stories were getting deep and the kids were falling into that state of dreaming, they would fall out of the rafters and be sent to bed. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to imagine that you are by this virtual fire. We are in that perfect, cozy little place. A few of us have gathered together. We have our cups full. There's a peat fire burning and popping, and the smell is wonderful. And you are here with me listening to stories. First of all, I want to say thank you on behalf of myself and all the traditional storytellers and all the performing artists out there who have had a run of bad luck, first with the coronavirus and, of course, AB5 here in California. So it's been a rough year. But you invited me by your fire. You filled my cup. You sat back and said, True, tell us a story. And that's just what I'm going to do. The first story I'm going to tell is, it's about... Well, it's your traditional leprechaun story, because you can't have a St. Patrick's Day event unless you tell a leprechaun story. You ready? Everybody say yes.
Yes!
All right, here we go. A long time ago, but not that long ago, there was a young girl, and her name was Fiona Malloy. Now, Fiona was one of those outgoing kind of young ladies. She was what we back in the old days would call a tomboy, but she was just all over the place. She was a scrapper. Her favorite game was throwing dirt clods at her brothers and running around outside, and she hated school. Oh my goodness. She couldn't spend a minute in school, but she was looking out the window. She was always goofy doing. She was always trickifying. Her mother was exasperated. Fiona Malloy had a big, thick head full of curly red hair that her mother put a ribbon in, trying to tame it down a little bit. Well, Fiona Malloy had gotten out of school and was running around in the hedgerows and everything, checking out this, checking out that, when all of a sudden she heard a tick, 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 tick. What was that? She could be pretty sneaky, and so she snuck up to some bushes. And what did she see in the bushes but a wee man? He was wearing a red tricorn. He was wearing a beautiful vest. And he was sitting there with a mouthful of nails, and he was hammering away on a shoe. His name was Sheridan. Don't ask me how I know that. I just know that. And Sheridan was working away. And she went, It's a leprechaun. Fiona Malloy got down low and grabbed the leprechaun. And he's, what are you doing? Put me down, put me down. What kind of a place is Ireland that young ladies are going around accosting leprechauns in bushes? And she looked at him, she said, I want 3 wishes. And he looked at her and went, Please, I'm a leprechaun. We do the pot of gold. Oh, where did I say that? We don't do the 3 wishes. That's a cluricaun thing. What shoe am I working on? I'm working on the left shoe. Right? That means I'm a leprechaun. Anyway, I'm not going to give you my pot of gold. And she went, Yes, you will. And she started to give him a little squeeze. Now, the one thing that Fiona Malloy knew really, really well was that, according to all the storytellers, who know a few things, according to all the storytellers, guess what? If you take an eye off a fairy creature, especially a leprechaun, for even a second, they're gone. And so she had her eye right on that leprechaun. And she said, You're going to show me your pot of gold. And he went, No, I'm not. And she went, Eat! And he went, Yeah! All right, fine. Go that way. And so they started walking. And as they started walking, she kept her eye on that leprechaun the whole time. And as she kept walking, he says, Fiona Malloy, if you would just, put a little more effort, pay attention to things like in school and everything, you wouldn't have to go around accosting leprechauns in bushes. And she said, I don't care. I want that pot of gold. He says, All right, well, that's fine. Oh, Fiona, your cows have gotten out. Your cows, they're running free. You can spend hours going after them. Now, did Fiona look to the right? Did she look to the left? Did she look for her cows? She did not. She kept her eye right on that leprechaun. Well, he looked at her and he said, Not wasted upon you was your edumacation. Well done. You didn't fall for my trick. Fine. All right, now go over this hedgerow and through the bushes and over this fence. All right, and now we're out on the road. Head to the right there to the crossroads. Very good. And as she was carrying him, suddenly he looked over his shoulder and said, Watch out! Watch out, Fiona Malloy! There's a carriage coming! Get out of the way! Was there a carriage coming? No, there was not a carriage coming. And did she look? Did she turn her head to the right, to the left, up, down? Did she look? She did not. Fiona Malloy, she knew better than to take her eye off that leprechaun for even a second. Well, he looked at her and he said, apparently somebody's been paying attention, something I didn't think you were capable of, young Fiona Malloy. He says, Right, up to the top of that hill there, all the way up to the top of that hill, we've got to go. And with that, they went up the hill, and she was getting exhausted, but she held that leprechaun right there. And he looked at her, and he smiled, and he cracked some jokes and everything, until finally they got up to the top of the mountain. And he said, all right, now just swing me around. And all right. And she swung him around, keeping an eye on him the whole time. And he says, let's see, the field I'm looking for. Oh, my God, Fiona Malloy. Oh, your house is on fire. The thatch is burning away. Oh, my goodness, what are you going to do? Did she look? She did not. She did not look at her blazing house. She squeezed him and went, you're trying to trick me. And he went, well, I'm a leprechaun. It's what I do. It's part of the guild rules. She said, please, just show me where your gold is. And he went, not wasted. Butter wouldn't melt in your mouth, young lady. Oh, my goodness. Fine, let's go. And with that, they marched down the hill until finally they came to a field full of thistles. Now, if you have not seen a field full of thistles, I have to tell you, oh my goodness, they are thick. They are prickly. They are not fun to go wandering through. But she took the leprechaun's directions, and they went all the way into this huge field of beautiful white thistles, as far as the eye could see, all covered with stickers and pricklies, and she was not a happy young lady. And finally they got in the middle of the field, and Sheridan, the leprechaun, looked at her and said, you know, Fiona Malloy, if you just pay attention the way you pay attention to me, there's nothing you can't do. Well, all right, young lady, you're standing upon me pot of gold. It's right here. And she looked around, and there were thistles as far as the eye could see. She said, well, where is it? Well, I buried it, of course. I'm not going to leave it out. Some dragon could fly by and take it. I'm not going to let that happen. It's buried right here. Really? And you're not lying to me? Anyway, I swear upon the leprechaun code of honor, I would never fantabulate you. Never. Or shenanigate you. So, absolutely, pot of gold right here. She went, all right, I'm going to trust you, leprechaun. And he looked at her and he smiled and he said, remember these words, and I'll check in on you. Don't miss the fact that you have amazing powers of concentration to stay on a leprechaun the way you have. And she set him down, and he took off his hat, put it back on, and he was gone. The leprechaun was gone. And she looked at that big field full of thistles and went, right, he's thinking that I'm not going to be able to find this pot of gold. And she pulled out of her hair a big red ribbon that her mom had tied into her hair that morning. And she took that red ribbon and she tied it around a big bunch of thistles so she could find it again. And then she ran. Right out of the thistles, right onto the road. All the way home, she was going so fast that when she went around corners, her back pockets filled up full of dirt. She went so fast that the dirt flew up behind her. She flew so fast you could hear sonic booms. Boom, 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 boom. Until finally, she ran into the shed. She hadn't been in that shed for years. She found a shovel. She ran back out, back around the corner, until finally, back to the field. And then she saw it. She looked for the red ribbon in the center of the field. And lo and behold, every white thistle had a red ribbon on it now, for as far as the eye could see. Thousands and thousands of red ribbons. Well, he hadn't technically lied to her. It just made it a little more challenging. And with that, she went out into the field, she took that shovel, and she dug, and she dug, and she dug, and she dug, and she dug. What did she do? That's right, she dug. And did she find that pot of gold? I am sad to say she did not. She dug a pretty mean furrow through that field, though. And eventually she went home. Now, it is said that in Ireland and Scotland, there weren't any red thistles before that time. And then in Ireland, as they say, it's liquid sunshine. Oh, it's the cleanest country in the world. We wash it every day. The rain coming down. Well, the rain coming down through those red ribbons got into the field. And pretty soon all those thistles were beautiful red thistles, which you can still see to this very day. I think a little bit of that magic stuck. Sheridan did not lie, and he did check in on her, as I understand it. Because Fiona Malloy did realize that once she learned how to concentrate on things, nothing ever got past her. And she went on to have a very successful life, and she married well, and she came to a country called America. And when she got to America, she married into a family, I think they were called the Quinns, something like that, McQuins or something like that. And that long line of women, all the way down to Maureen herself, I understand, had that amazing power of perception, which allows them to track leprechauns and gnomes to this very day. And thus, you've heard a traditional leprechaun story from True Thomas, the storyteller. All right, now if you have any questions or anything, feel free to send a message. If there's anything, if you're having problems hearing or anything, please let us know. Hang on just a second here. All right, now you know why thistles are red. We're going to do one of my hardest pieces, 5,000 years of Irish history in just 5 minutes. Now, some of you are going, oh my goodness, I haven't heard this in forever. You can tell how old the paper is here. I'm going to ask my beautiful lady Kat there to give me a count when I give her the cue, not until then. Or you can do it online and just let us know. I'll point to you and say, go. So, the rules are, when I say the Irish do what they love to do, you're going to yell, fight amongst themselves. So, can you do that for me? Let's practice, everybody at home. Here we go. And the Irish do what they love to do?
Fight amongst themselves!
Really, that's the best you got? Let's try that one more time, nice and loud. And the Irish do what they love to do?
Fight amongst themselves!
All right, now just imagine that multiplied by 1,000 and everybody holding up a Guinness. All right, here we go. Well, except for the little kids. That is. Anyway, so we're going to get ready here. Hang on a second.
Stopwatch is at the ready.
Yes, thank you. Let me get a drink.
Yeah. Okay.
Sadly, that is not Ushkiba. All right. I'm going to take the glasses off because that just slows me down. Here we go. 3000 BC, in the beginning, it was the Ice Age. It was really, really cold, and we cover a couple of thousand years that way. 999 BC, we have the Celtic creation myth, or rather we don't, because the Celts don't have one, because it's mything. 970 BC, the red deer hunters come to Ireland, we think maybe to hunt red deer. 500 BC, fur bolgs, big, hairy, dirt-moving kind of folk move in, not to be confused with fur balls. 300 BC, Fomorians start raiding Ireland, giant deformed warriors prone to eat almost anything or anyone, led by Balor of the Evil Eye, because he had a great big evil eye. 299 BC, the Tuatha Dé Danann arrive in flying magical boats. They have all sorts of nifty magical stuff. Later, they are called gods. 298 BC, the grandson of Balor swings a rock around his head, says, Grandpa, hey, watch it, you can put an eye out with that. And of course he does, also called the Battle of Moytura. 200 BC, the Milesians arrive from beyond the ninth wave, real estate values plummet, the Tuatha Dé Danann decide to move underwater, underground, create all sorts of nifty tourist spots. 1 AD, Queen Maeve goes to pick up a cow with 30,000 troops, gets into a fight with a guy named after a dog. 250 AD, the great Irish hero Finn McCool burns his thumb on a fish and becomes leader of the Fianna, and the Irish do what they love to do.
Fight amongst themselves!
415 AD, a Romanized British slave is picked up, 10 sheep escapes, calls himself Pat. 430 AD, the return of Pat becomes St. Patrick, starts converting left and right and turning Celtic gods into saints, something they don't care for very much. 810 AD, lots of very lonely bored monks are left alone with ancient Crayolas. The result, the Book of Kells, the very first Irish coloring book. 830 AD, the Vikings visit Ireland to stop at all the nifty tourist spots and do a little shopping and reaving and pillaging. No, Sven, pillage first, then burn. 978 AD, Brian Brew discovers a very important thing. Not only can Vikings use axes, but axes can be used on Vikings. Yay! 1169 AD, Strongbow and friends invade. They are called Normans, Northmen, wannabe Vikings with bad haircuts and snotty French attitudes. 1171 AD, Catholicism returns. Silly us, we were doing it all wrong. The Galaglaw fight the Nords because the Normans are now Irish. The Irish do what they love to do.
Fight amongst themselves!
1500s, the English invade. Says Elizabeth, Blarney, Blarney. All I ever hear is Blarney. Get used to it, babe. 1509 AD, tag team the Irish and the Spanish versus the English. One problem, the Spanish wimp out. 1600s, the English give all the land to the Protestants. The Catholics rejoice because sooner or later they'll all be Irish, and the Irish get to do what they love to do.
Fight amongst themselves.
1649 AD, Oliver Cromwell, a man of God, kills millions in the name of God. God is not amused. 1659, the remaining Irish war chiefs decide to take their war bands on a European tour called the Flight of the Wild Geese. And 1745, the Wild Geese are seen in all the better wars, fighting for the French, the Spanish, and the Dutch, and offered huge discounts when fighting the English. 1770 AD, King George III is having a little problem with his colonies, mainly us. 1791, the English become the Anglo-Irish and create the ascendancy by walking on things Irish, mainly the people. 1798, the open revolt, the wearing of the green, the wearing of the orange, and the wearing of the bloody bandages. 1830, Daniel O'Connell, a Catholic, becomes mayor of Dublin, supported by many factions. And in 1840, the factions split up, and the Irish do what they love to do.
Fight amongst themselves.
1845, 46, 47, the Great Potato Famine, 1 million die and 1 million immigrate to the US and the UK. The English continue to export crops from Ireland. 1850, the Irish build cities and railroads and bridges and a great many pubs, and with the pubs come Irish politicians and Irish cops, and they all send money home. 1859, the Irish workers in Scotland are called Barneys and are hunted. The Scots find out that Barney is one mean purple dinosaur. I hit you, you hit me. 1860, the Irish join the American Civil War. Ah, sure, don't you know we know everything about fighting one another? Here, let us show you how. 1866, the American Civil War vets, the Irish ones, create the Fenian Army and attack Canada. 1879, in Ireland, a new concept, the National Land League, is formed, the very first form of rent control. If you kill your landlord, he can't collect the rent. 1882, John L. Sullivan, heavyweights, bare knuckles, boxing champion of the world, is beaten by another Irishman. 1890, the Celtic Renaissance, Yeats, Synge, Thomas, poets and writers everywhere discover the illuminating qualities of Ushkiba, otherwise known as whiskey. 1914, the Great Home Rule War is about to start, but is preempted by World War I. The Catholics quietly wait for the Protestants to come back. 1916, the Easter Rising, the English kill the leaders, a big mistake because the Irish love a good martyr and write millions of sappy songs to torment the English. 1917, the IRA is born, the city folk fight the country folk, the Protestants fight the Catholics, the Irish versus the Anglo-Irish, they all discover dynamite. 1921, national Irish pastime, smuggling. 1941, the Irish decide not to participate in World War II. The English everywhere are relieved. 1960, an Irish Catholic is elected President of the United States, the most powerful country in the world. 1994, peace breaks out in Ireland. Irish bewildered, sudden cold snap reported in hell. And in 2020, the national exports of Ireland are rock bands, green beer, and leprechauns. Time.
5:02.
Oh,
no! Just shoot me now. 5:02.
Slowing down
God,
in your
I'm
old age.
getting old. Well, there you go. That was 5,000 years of Irish history in just 5 minutes. There you go. You need no more learning. You're all educated now. So, if I may, St. Patrick wasn't Irish. He was actually probably from Cornwall or something like that. He was kidnapped by pirates. Yar! All 9 hostages grabbed St. Patrick and brought him back to Ireland, where he was made a slave. He spent many years out in the fields going, this is not all green and lovely. It's cold, wet, and miserable. But he also managed to learn to speak the Gaelic, the Irish, and he also had some visions from God. God said, hey, go catch a boat. He walked down to the shore. They said, hey, we're not going to take you with. He said, I'm going. Right, get in. He came back to his home. His family's very glad to see him. Later on, he went and studied in France. And then in big glowing letters, a scroll was delivered in a dream and said, please come back to Ireland. At which point he went, no, I don't want to go back to Ireland. They treat me miserably. They said, please come back. We want you to spread the word of God. At which point he said, really? Okay. And so him and some people, after they convinced the church, which they were not thrilled with this concept, he went to Ireland to spread the word of God. Now, by the way, there were already missionaries there who were trying to spread Christianity, but not doing that well. Patrick got there, and this big tall guy gets off the boat, and he's got a face like an axe. axe. Literally, they called him Ad's head. His head was shaved with a tonsure, so the hair was in the back. He was all business forward, party in the back. And at which point he got out there and he spread the word. Now, his particular flavor of Christianity at the time was heavily influenced by the Pelagian movement and very monastic. And so they had that identification with nature, which is something the Celts have always loved absolutely. And so it was, the word worked. But he had many challenges. At one point, he had to do a special prayer called the Lorica of St. Patrick, the breastplate of St. Patrick, which was a special chant. If you get a chance to check it out, it's very beautiful, which allowed him to have the illusion of being deer. And so it was called the Liafial, the deer's cry. And so it was, he went on to have a very successful life and converted many people, but not without many, many challenges. And he kind of became a representative to the Irish people of somebody who just, no matter what, could stick it out. And when the Irish eventually immigrated to the United States, they looked for somebody to represent them, and St. Patrick was their man. And so we've had St. Patrick's Day parades pretty much in the U.S. since I think the early 1600s, 1700s. It's been a while, except for now, this year. Kind of sad, really. But in any case, somebody wants me to sing something really short. Hee-vee-ah-da-doo-ah, hit-a-lan, hee-vee-ah-da-da-da-da-doo-ah, hee-vee-ah-da-doo-ah, hit-a-lan, hee-vee-ah-da-da-da-da-doo-ah, shimmer-doot-a-hoonami, shimmer-doot-da-dine-me, shimmer-doot-a-hoonami, I'm wheel-foot-na-hi-ya, shimmer-doot-a-hoonami, shimmer-doot-da-dine-me, shimmer-doot-a-hoonami, I'm wheel-foot-na-hi-ya, hoonami-na-kut-a-kin, na-kut-a-kin, na-kut-a-kin, hoonami-na-kut-a-kin, na-kush-out-na-moya, hoonami-na-kut-a-kin, na-kut-a-kin, na-kut-a-kin, hoonami-na-kut-a-kin, na-kush-out-na-moya, hee-vee-ah-da-doo-ah, hit-a-lan, hee-vee-ah-da-da-da-da-doo, hee-vee-ah-da-doo-ah, hit-a-lan, hee-vee-ah-da-da-da-da-doo. Which, by the way, if you do a song like Shellacuddio and it's Coigra Vicator Shellacuddio and Chakatara Ruvan Shellacuddio and it's Coigra Vicator, you feel that troubling beat in there? Well, that same influence that traveled with the Shawnees also went with the shantymen who were singing on those ships. And their music intermixed with the Caribbean influence, the Afro-Caribbean beat. And so, guess what? If you take that Irish influence and just add a little bit to it, you can take it from Shellacuddio and its Coigra Vicator to Shellacuddio and its Coigra Vicator to Shellacuddio and Chakatera Ruvan. Peace out, props, love to the man. Right? It's a rap beat. And how do you get there? Well, you go dowdling, dowdling to scat, all the way up to rap. It's all interconnected. Anyway, where was I? Oh, I was going to tell you a story. So we mentioned St. Patrick. And oh, by the way, green was originally an unlucky color. It was the color of the fairies. The original color of Ireland, which you can still see on their national flag, is a beautiful blue, a sky blue or azure blue, Irish blue. And by the way, Ireland is the only country in the world that has a musical instrument as its national symbol, a harp. I think that's pretty cool. Sláinte, hang on just a second.
Small children are dancing to your singing.
Wonderful. So, I think we're going to, how are we doing on time?
About halfway there.
All right. I think we're going to do one more story, if that's okay with you. This is a little bit older story. There might be a few scary moments, but I hope you'll stick around. Sorry, I was going really fast. This is a story I call The Silent Bride. A long time ago, there was a young man who had been a soldier. Let's call him Jack. Or you could call him Seamus or James if you like. But young Jack was a soldier and he'd fought for many years. He had fought in this place and that place. And he was very lucky to come back not in a bowl, not having to beg for a living. He had all his limbs and he had a sword, and they gave him a loaf of bread, as was traditional, and he had a few coins as well. And so he got back to Ireland, but all his family and all his kin had passed away. And so he was a free man wandering, but he knew what he wanted. He wanted a farm, and he wanted someone to love. And as he was wandering from one part of Ireland to another part of Ireland, he came through a town. And what did he see? What did he see but sitting outside an inn, a beautiful young lady. She had beautiful auburn hair, rich, beautiful brown eyes. She had a smile and dimples for miles. And she was weaving and she was spinning. And I'm telling you, her hands flew. She spun, she wove. And he was looking at her. And she just looked up at him shyly and gave him just the smallest of smiles. His heart was captured. He found a room and he talked to the innkeeper where he was staying. And he said, the young lady down the street, the one with the thick brown hair and the beautiful brown eyes, the one with the winning smile, what's her name? Oh, well, why do you ask, sir? Well, I'm just curious. Well, her name is Maureen, and she is quite beautiful. Well, yes, I agree, she's quite beautiful. Is she spoken for? Well, not. Actually, no, she's not spoken for, but you won't ever hear a word crosswise from her. What do you mean? She doesn't talk. She doesn't talk? No, she doesn't talk at all. Well, I don't mind a woman who doesn't talk too much. I mean, I'm kind of a quiet man myself. He says, all right, well, her father owns that inn that she's in front of. You could go and talk to him. And so the soldier did just that. And he went and he saw her as she was gathering up her things, and he smiled at her and she smiled back at him. And he walked in and he found the father and he said, hello, sir. My name is Jack. I'm a soldier and I would like to marry your daughter. The man looked at him funny and said, why would you want to marry my daughter? And he looked out of the corner of his eye and he said, why wouldn't I want to marry your daughter? He says, are you having fun with me? No, I'm not having fun with you. I think she's perfectly beautiful, and I'd be glad to marry her if she'll have me. My daughter doesn't speak. I'm sorry, because she doesn't want to? No. Have a seat. They poured a couple of pints, had a sip. The old man looked at him. He said, my daughter was out in the woods gathering some things. She's mad crafty, and she could talk just normal before she went into the woods, but after she came back from the woods, not a word. She can't sing. She can't say a word. We think she's bespelled. The soldier looked at him and he said, well, all that besides. He turned and looked at her and his heart went, brrr. He was all twitter-pated. He says, if she'll have me, I would love to marry your daughter. And so it was. They decided, they went up and he spoke to her and she smiled and nodded and said, yes, she would like to marry the handsome young soldier. And they got deranged together. Well, they got married, and he did buy that little farm away from everybody else, and he set it up, and they had some sheep, and they had some chickens, and they had some geese. They did not have llamas or alpacas. I'm sorry, sweetie. But they did have all sorts of interesting fiber-bearing animals. And, well, you know, he was getting along with her fine, and they fell in love as a young couple does. But time passed. And pretty soon, it was just the popping of the fire and the sound of the animals and the whistling of the wind. Pretty soon, he longed to hear a human voice. And he could see it in her face, how much she wanted to talk to him, how much she wanted to communicate with him. Unfortunately, neither of them had the book learning to talk to each other with the written words and the reading. That spring, the young man was out working, and he heard of a lady named Biddy Early. Now, Biddy Early was a woman with the second sight, one of those henwives, a magic woman. And so he loaded his young lady back up on the wagon, and they went into town, and sure enough, they found Biddy Early. Now, to tell you something about Biddy Early, supposedly Biddy Early, when she was younger, she had found a magical blue bottle, that when she looked through that magical blue bottle, it would allow her to see in the past, the present, and the future. It made her hand in gloves with the fairy folk. And I have to warn you, You never mess with the fairy folk. In Ireland, in Scotland, they call them the good folk because they don't want to have anything to do with them. They're dangerous. They will lead a child to a cool, clear puddle of water just to see the bubbles rise. But anyhow, Biddy Early was said to be hand in glove with the fairy folk, and she offered her help to many people, which did not make her much loved with the local clergy or the government. And in fact, a clergyman and some soldiers actually showed up to her land one day and were going to arrest her, at which point she walked out and said, "Good day. We've come to arrest you, Biddy Early." And she looked at them and went, "Like that for your arresting. Like that you'll stay." And the men and the horses were frozen perfectly. They could not move. And she went on. She went to the market. She stopped by the pub. She had a little bit of food. She stopped and did some visiting, took care of her messages. And on the way back home, she walked past, and the men and the horses were still frozen. And she walked up and she said, "Do you still want to arrest me?" And they looked at her and went, "Be on your way." And she snapped her fingers, and they quietly turned the horses and left. You did not mess with Biddy Early. Well, Biddy Early sees the young couple coming, and she gets out of the house and she looks and she says, "Ah, I've been waiting for you." He says, "How did you know we were coming?" She says, "I'm Biddy Early." She says, he says, "My young lady, she doesn't speak." "I know. I already know. You go and have yourself a pint. The young lady and I, we will speak volumes together in a language men do not understand. Come this way, darling." And she took her hand and brought her into the house, and they had tea and probably stronger beverages as well. Time came and went, and the young man showed back up, and he very quietly waited out on the porch. And Biddy Early came out with the young lady, and she said, "Ah, I know what happened." And the young man said, "What?" "Your young lady went into the forest, and she went to an old well. What she didn't know was in that well was a nixie. A nixie is a particularly dangerous kind of fairy. And while she was gathering up some water to work on some projects, her comb fell into the well. And the nixie got very angry, and he put a spell on her. And that spell prevents her from talking and singing." The young man went, "Oh my goodness, what do we do, Biddy Early? Can you do I summon a priest? Do I say, what do I do?" And she said, "Do not fash yourself. I know what to do. Here's what you're going to do. Tomorrow you're going to take your young lady to that well, and you're going to have her put 3 pieces of silver into the bucket and lower it down, clean them very clean, lower it down to the water, and you're going to have her apologize. Even if she can't say anything, she's going to say, 'I apologize.' Remember, 3 pieces of silver, apologize, then leave." "Yes, ma'am." And so the young soldier and his beautiful bride got onto the wagon, and the next day they went to the woods, and it was a beautiful, rich woods full of green and lush, ancient trees covered with moss. And they got into the woods, and they found that well, and the young lady got down, Maureen, and she moved up close to the well, and she took 3 pieces of silver. She very carefully cleaned them and set them in the bucket, and she set it down the well. Bloop, bloop, bloop. And she said, and then all of a sudden her voice, "I'm so sorry, my comb fell out of my hair. I really am sorry. I'm so sorry. I do apologize. I did not mean any disrespect whatsoever. Thank you. Oh, I'm not supposed to say thank you. I appreciate this so much. You're truly wonderful." And with that, she started to back up, and then she ran out of the woods, and she saw her young, handsome soldier, and she went running to him. I could talk. And she ran up to him, and she grabbed him, and she gave him a kiss that made his ears burn. And then she talked, and she told him how much she loved him, how she loved his smile, how beautiful his eyes were, how much she loved how hard he worked, and how he worked without a shirt on, and so on and so forth. And this went on, and she talked, and oh, years of language, of love were pouring out of her like a river. But that river was rather large. And it kept going and going and going from morning till night, morning till night. She talked, talk, 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 talk. She could not stop talking. And she said to her husband, "Oh, my beloved Jack, I'm so sorry, but I just don't be able to stop talking. Anything that's in my head, it comes out of my mouth, and I can't stop talking. And by the way, do you know that goose, the big gray one? He's a mean bugger. We need to do something about this." And this just talk, 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 until finally the soldier was outside going, "This will not abide." And she looked tired and ragged. She had circles around her eyes. He says, "Darling, my love, my Joe, please get in the wagon." "Yes, my love, let's go talk to Biddy Early. She's very wise. Do you know how wise she is? I understand that she actually has a magical bottle." And this went on and on and on. And he went back to her, and sure enough, there was Biddy Early sitting on the porch having a little bit. And she saw him. She said, "Ah, you're back. Well, I kind of saw this, and so come on in, dearly." And they went in and talked. He went and had a pint. He came back, and Biddy Early said, "All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to go back to that well, because that Nixie was rather tricksy. And what you're going to do is you're going to sit by that well again, and you're going to take 3 more silver coins, and you're going to put them in the water, and you're going to talk to the Nixie. Be polite, but you're going to talk to him the whole time. Because I tell you something about Nixies that live in wells." And the two of them looked at each other, and the young one said, "Why? Please tell me. I absolutely have to know. Tell me about Nixies in the well. I'm very fascinated." And this went on. She said, "In a well, he has to repeat back everything you say." "That sounds wonderful. Let's go, my love. Let's get into the wagon. I have to feed the geese." And off they went. The next day, she talked the whole way until they got to the woods, and her voice filled the woods, and she came up to the well, her husband staying a good distance away, and she took 3 more silver coins, and she put them in the bucket, and she sent them down. "I'm sorry, Nixie, if I have offended you in any way, but here are 3 more silver coins. I'm so sorry. I'm terribly sorry." And up out of the well, she heard, "Terribly sorry, terribly sorry." She said, "I wish I could stop talking. I really can't stop talking." And the voice down below said, "Wish I could stop talking. Can't stop talking." And this went on and on and on until it came near sunset. And her voice was so ragged. She said, "I just wish I could stop talking." And the voice in the well said, "Wish I could stop talking." She said, "If I could just stop talking, I would never bother you again." Bother you again. "If I could only stop talking." And the voice in the well said, "Stop talking." And the young lady stood up, and then she whispered, "Can I still talk a little?" And she could. And she got back away from the well, and she climbed back into the wagon, and she took the shawl that she had woven for her husband and her child to be, and they snuggled up close, and she said, "I love you. You are my heart." And he looked back at her and said, "No matter what you say or what you don't, I will always love you." And guess what? They lived, everybody say it with me, happily ever after. Give yourselves a round of applause. And that is a piece I called The Silent Bride. I hope you enjoyed it. It's a traditional fairy story. My name, again, is True Thomas the Storyteller, also known as Robert Sawyer. If I could ask a few small favors of you. First of all, I want to say thank you to my lovely family for making this possible. Yay. I want to say thank you to all of you, and you know who you are, who support me in my storytelling. There aren't that many traditional storytellers out there, especially California. My life has gotten very difficult indeed, and so the fact that you're supporting me means the world to me. And also it gives me, and by supporting me, it gives me a chance to go out and share traditional stories, Celtic, Norse, Middle Eastern, what have you, because I believe storytelling is a very important art. And so I want to say thank you for supporting the performing arts. If you get a chance, there is a little tag which my lovely lady cat, it's a PayPal me. Ian, thank you very much for supporting the storytelling arts. magical Irish St. Patrick's Day. Blessings.
Yay!
And now we're going to very carefully sneak up and push the button.
Thank you, everyone.
Slán